I'm Mike.
And I'm Angela.
And this is NFGeeks. All right, so Angela, we're going to continue this discussion about music and how music touches us as NFs.
Yep.
You know, so I'll talk about my stuff.
Yeah, I want to know how your side of it is, and even like we were talking about, before time music, or even now, how does it? Like I was talking about how I grew up with certain music. How did you feel about music that you grew up with and music that you like now?
Sure.
Things like that.
Well, first of all, even though I was a teenager in the, I'm Generation X, so I was a teenager in the 80s. I find 80s music amusing, but I don't know if I like it on a deeper level.
Okay.
Because one thing about 80s music, it was sort of the introduction of the synthesizer, and so everybody thought they could play synthesizer, but like really it's all just one note things, you know what I mean? It's not very complex. But actually, all right, so I've and this is going to get a lot of comments too, but I'm a big fan of the NF band to rule all NF bands, and that's the Beatles. Okay, I'm a big fan of the Beatles, as Angela knows. I have Beatles things around the house.
All over.
Here at Crystal Sky Castle.
Yes.
So I've been a big fan of the Beatles so first of all, I'll give you the time period. I've been a fan of the Beatles since I was 18. So it's almost 25 years.
Wow.
I've consistently liked the Beatles.
Wow.
And the song, and you have to be a Beatles fan to understand this. The song that convinced me of it was that I would love no other, was because you could fall in love quickly. Was the song "Dear Prudence" on the White Album. That's the second song on side one. And after hearing, because the first song is "Back in the USSR," and everyone's heard that song as a popular Beatles song that would come on the radio.
Yeah. So
I wasn't, sort of amazed by that. But then the second song is "Dear Prudence." When I heard that song, I thought, oh my God, this is the band. So a couple of things. So first of all, this is for the hipsters. There's going to be a bunch of hipster comments about, the Beatles stink and all this, blah, 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 blah. And, and this is their, I hate everything mainstream. This is the same argument who's like, Shakespeare's terrible. The Mona Lisa is crap. Anna Karenina is the worst novel. Like, shut up with that. But go ahead. I mean, you're going to leave those comments anyway. But
we can't stop you.
Yeah, really, we can't. Well, I suppose I could delete them, but I don't like doing that.
No, that just makes us look bad.
Yeah, well, not just that. I want people to have a dialogue,
We want you to feel safe.
Yeah, I only delete particularly offensive comments. That's the only time I'll give it to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let me talk about the Beatles a little bit.
I'd like to hear.
Sure. The first thing, so first of all, I am a Beatleologist. So I have a Beatles theory that the Beatles themselves, symbolically, and not necessarily literally, but we'll see, symbolically, the four of them represent NF consciousness. And I think that's why the Beatles have sort of an NF cornerstone on NFness. So to go through it, I think John Lennon represents ENFP. And I think he was an ENFP. Now, before you think like, we're sort of like, or that I'm saying, well, I'm like John Lennon, that doesn't bring me any pleasure as a Beatleologist. I can tell you that John Lennon was a crazy person, and did all sorts of crazy things all the time. All right, so it does not like, oh, gee, it's so cool, I might write Imagine. No, I mean, I think ENFP is like, he was a nut. And he was a nut. Paul McCartney, I think, is very ENFJ. To be honest. And I know a lot of people who type Paul McCartney kind of say that he's an SP, and I don't think so. I don't think you could write Maybe I'm Amazed and Yesterday and songs like that and be an SP. Doesn't mean SPs don't write nice songs. They do. But those are very NF-sounding songs. Yeah. They're a little too NF for him not to be an NF.
Yeah.
So I think he's an NF. Now, George Harrison, this is the one I'm the most sure on. George Harrison, hands down, was an INFJ. Like, for real. Like, the real George Harrison, like, literally was an INFJ. I don't know that Lennon was an ENFP or McCartney was an ENFJ. I think symbolically they represent that, and I think they probably were. But George Harrison was an INFJ. He looks like an INFJ. He talks like an INFJ. Okay? He has the INFJ obnoxiousness. I mean, he has everything. Like, he's absolutely an INFJ. And I think that Ringo represents INFP. At least his as a representation of INFP. But I don't think he's the one I'm the least sure on. I don't think Ringo actually was an INFP. Okay. I think he was an ISFP.
But these are just hypotheses.
Right, and really I'm just talking about the metaphor of them, not the reality of the people. So that's one little thing I got going.
Okay.
But what I like about them is that, well, one thing I like about them isn't necessarily NF, is that the Beatles are, you don't have to take them so seriously, so you can have fun with them. But at the same time, there is something artistic going on. So it's a good like middle ground between art and just having fun, like just listening to them and having fun with it. And it's not like super pretentious, you know. At the same time, it's not totally goofy either. I mean, there's moments of goofiness in the Beatles, but
there's always moments of goofiness,
right? But there's a balance. But I think what it really touches upon is my idealism. I think the idealism of the Beatles, whether it's love or anything else.
Because we are idealists.
Right, and I think that that idealism touches me very much. And honestly, I think the Beatles write some of the best love songs ever, and that always really touches me as an ENFP and as an NF. I think they're... And honestly, I like, and this is, I guess, where my part of hipsterness, I'm not a big fan of some of the big Beatles songs that are sort of love songs, you know.
The more like highly played on the radio
right,
songs,
that we all know. Right,
I'd rather listen to the lower stuff.
Right, like mainly because they're sort of overplayed. Like, you know, I mean, Yesterday's a great song, but you know, I've heard Yesterday like a million times. I don't need to hear it again. And believe it or not, I'm not a big fan of All You Need Is Love. I'm not a big fan of that song. I don't think it's well written. I don't think it's well sung. Lennon sounds like he's a little out of beat sometimes. Seriously, if you're a musician, he's like a little off. Like I think that song's overrated compared to other things in the catalog, you know, of the Beatles. But when there is a love song, it's very beautiful. And what I particularly like about Beatles love songs too, and nobody gives them credit for this because they're one of the first ones to do this, is that they're sort of self-deprecating. I mean, in a lot of the Beatles songs, particularly John Lennon's songs, where he was the main writer, it's not like, hey, I'm cool, I'm sexy, I'm going to, you know, it's always like, I'm a loser, I'm an idiot, nobody loves me, I totally screwed up this relationship, I'm pathetic. You know,
which is where you could get that INFP or
right, that NFness. Like that's why I think they're definitely, or Lennon at least was an NF, because it's always about how I can't make this work, and I'm such a loser, and I messed up the relationship, and it's because I don't know what I'm doing, and please love me anyway. And you know, there's especially early Beatles stuff. There's a lot of that going on. That you don't. That was. I mean, now. You know, a lot of songs are even more complex than that. But prior to the Beatles, it wasn't like that. Like, listen to Elvis. There's not that kind of self-deprecating stuff in the Elvis. There's sensitivity in Elvis's songs. And granted, I know he didn't write them. But there's not this sort of turning the light on the self and talking about the self, especially since he didn't write them. Mm-hmm. You know, and some Elvis songs are like obnoxious. You know, like in one line in A Little Less Conversation is like... shut your mouth and open up your heart, baby, and satisfy me. Yeah. That's
almost
one
like
of the lines.
Cockiness. Almost
right, like shut
cockiness.
your mouth. Like that works. Like if I said that, would that work?
No.
If Michael said that?
No.
If I said, you know, shut your mouth? I don't know. I would never say that. No. Apparently it worked, though, because Elvis was big. But I think, all right, but the fact that when the Beatles talk about love, it's sort of very sort of sad, and they're not promoting themselves. It's really more of, I'm not getting this right or doing this right, please forgive me.
Yeah.
You know, that patheticness, I appreciate that.
Wanting to gain that worthiness,
yes.
Almost. Yeah.
And there's also sort of this play on things where the guy is the one being used. Like, people don't pick that up. Like, where the guy really loves, but the woman doesn't care. That's a very sort of modern point of view that goes on. There's actually a whole theory that the Beatles are really a male-girl band. Like a lot of girl bands in the 60s, like the Supremes and whatever, have similar themes that the Beatles are actually singing about but singing about them as men. You know, that's
which is that, you know, I'm the vulnerable one or things like that.
All right, now another band that I like, and I'm going to get even more crap for this one, for the other one, but I don't care because I have evidence for this one. But I'm actually a big fan of the Beach Boys. Okay.
I like the Beach Boys.
Yeah.
I like the Beach Boys, too.
Yeah,
I have to admit.
Yes, and there's something very NF going on with the Beach Boys. Now, I realize the lyrics are a little dated, because it's about hamburger stands and, you know, whatever. And that's also because, too, just a little Beach Boys history. The Beach Boys, you know, there's like three brothers in the band. And their father was like one of those insane fathers living vicariously through the art of the kid. You know, this is like Mozart's dad and Joe Jackson of the Jackson 5. You know, it was one of those, Beach Boys had one of those insane fathers. And he always wanted them to be like, he didn't want them to grow in their songs. He just wanted them to always be about teenagers and things like that so you could sell them. So that's why the lyrics sometimes are very teenage-like. But first of all, there's a lot of Brian Wilson, okay, I think, who's the leader of the Beach Boys before he went bananas, was an NF. I think he's an NF in the way he writes songs and things like that. Mm-hmm. Listen to "Warmth of the Sun," and it's very NF. But the Beach Boys. Here's my argument, though. The Beach Boys have one of the most NF albums ever made. It's an NF orgasm. Okay, and that's Pet Sounds.
Oh yes.
Okay. Because it's all love songs, and it follows a specific progression of how a relationship develops, like loosely. Okay, the songs go in a very specific order to that end. And what makes it particularly NF is that Pet Sounds ends on such a downer. Like, it ends on a total sad, the relationship ends and everything's wrong and it's never coming back. Like, it ends on this total downer song, Caroline No, okay, which is this very downer song. So, and in fact, when I'm feeling sad about relationships and love, which is, all the time, I put on Pet Sounds. I put on Pet Sounds to sort of have empathy for me, I think. So that's one way it taps into my NFness, is that particular album is so melancholy. It's very melancholy. It might be the most melancholy album ever. And because of that, when I'm feeling down and depressed after I break up with somebody or just feeling lonely, I put on that album and just listen to it over and over and over again. And it's sort of tapping into that sort of sad emo side of being the NFs. It's like a proto-emo album. If you're into emo stuff, or if you just consider yourself, I know it's sort of past emo, I guess, in the terminology. But everyone knows what it means. If you're particularly emo and you want to get into like proto-emo things, then get Pet Sounds.
Yeah. So do you feel like, because I what you just said kind of caught my attention, was when you listen to certain music, do you feel like you want to listen to it because it almost makes you feel better? Even if it's sad music, it almost makes you feel better about what's going on with you, because you're like, oh, someone else is feeling this way too.
Yes. When I want to feel positive and a little more contemplative about love, I'll listen to the Beatles. Because there's a wide range of songs. That's one thing I like about the Beatles. There can
be happy ones and sad ones.
They run the emotional spectrum.
Yes.
From sadness to elation to disappointment. I mean, that's one of the great things about the Beatles. But when I want to but still, it's very positive. The Beatles, always try to end on an upbeat, which is another reason why I like them. So, when I want to feel positive and feel better about myself and better about life, I listen to the Beatles. When I'm feeling sad and depressed and nobody loves me and why can't I get a relationship going the right way and why am I, how come I keep fumbling this ball? That's when I put on Pet Sounds. Just Pet Sounds, because it ends again like on a fumble.
And it just almost makes you feel a little better.
Yes.
At some point.
Yes, kind of. Or at least I feel validated, I think, when I listen to Pet Sounds in particular. In terms of the direction it goes, because it starts off with the most idealistic NF song ever. Wouldn't it be nice? Like, if you want to hear what NF sounds like when we're feeling idealist, find on YouTube "Wouldn't It Be Nice" by the Beach Boys, and that's like getting right into NF consciousness.
Taps right into it.
Yes, this is what it's like when we're in our idealist, love is wonderful.
Our happy time.
Right, and we're gonna get married, and it's gonna be. Yes, so and you'll hate it too if you don't. You might find it too sickeningly sweet, but I love that song. "Wouldn't It Be Nice" is one of my favorites.
Yeah, and it's a good thing, and I even feel like with me too. I don't know if maybe this is just a girl thing, but I like to listen to, if I'm particularly pissed off at a guy, or in the past relationships, I'll listen to like those angry F you to the guy kind of songs, and those make me feel better.
Yes, and that's what's funny is going back to the Beatles is like, I remember, and again I'm old. So, there's one song, I forget what it is, by Alanis Morissette. This is like 20 years ago, I guess. But "You Ought to Know" or something, where she's just railing against a guy.
Yes. Yeah, I think I know the song you're talking about.
Railing about, whatever. And there's a few of those by other female artists, too, Right, railing against a guy, And in the Beatles versions of this are, a girl broke the heart of the guy, and the guy's like just totally pathetic, Since you left me, I'm all alone, They're all sad. It's not like I'm gonna kill you. It's all just really sad and pathetic and take me back, and
Yeah.
It's funny that it's that opposite.
They're trying to be like, please, I love you, just love me, but some girls are just like, no, I think I'll just wreck something of yours, or
right. That opposite side is being that vitriol.
I think probably my favorite song is, there's a song by Carrie Underwood, which is gonna bust up his front headlights with a Louisville, slash his tires, rip up his seats, write my name in keys across the side of your car. I'm just going to mess you all up.
Now, how does that connect to your NFness, you think?
Because I feel like I have those days where I would love nothing more than to just ruin the person who ruined me. But then the emotional kicks in and you're just like, but I don't want to make that person, as much as I would love it. You know, I get so angry so quickly, but then I have to think and step back for a second, and which is why I think it's nice that I have an INFJ and that he kind of calms me down a little bit. But back in the day when I didn't have him, it was hell breaking loose if you pissed me off.
Now, is there any music you think that you hate because you're an NF? Like, what would be the opposite of this? Like, that you don't get into, and it's because it just sort of violates or just runs perpendicular to your NF stuff.
Yeah. No, I could think of one. And you might even agree with me, maybe even though, you know, we have an age difference, but rap music pisses me off more than anything in the world.
Really? Why?
I'm not talking like Beastie Boys, like rap, like that kind of thing. Like, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the more recent, just nonsensical, repetitive, mutating, horrible rap. That it's about drugs.
Not that you have any opinion about this or anything.
Oh, not that I have any opinion. But, you know, that's that. And it's like, I almost feel like I'm an old person. Like, damn kids with your rap music or whatever. But I really am. That really does make me mad more than anything. I hate that music more than anything. And I have friends who listen to it to the point where I'll be like, can we just not listen to music at all? Like, you don't have to listen to anything I want to listen to, but just please don't make me listen to that.
Sure. I think for me, it's metal. And of course, when I say metal, I mean
like death
original metal. Well, death metal. Right? I can't even understand why you would like that at all. But when I say metal, I'm talking about old metal, like true metal, like Judas Priest and Iron Maiden.
Yeah.
You know, the inventors of metal.
Yes, I know. What
but even those, but I know metal spans the whole time. But I've never been able to get into metal. It's a little too hard.
Too intense.
Yeah.
You can't get into it, and you can't connect to it. I feel.
Yeah, and it's very angry sometimes. You know, some of it's very, very sort of angry.
To the point where there's even no words.
Yes. Or it's very sort of, if we're talking about like pop metal, and this is more in the 80s, like Motley Crue or Poison. And I can't believe Poison is like a classic band now. Poison was a horrible band.
They put it in Rock of Ages.
Oh my God, I know. You guys, I don't know. I guess everything changes with time, and that's fine. But in the 80s, they were terrible. I mean, I just thought they were terrible.
Yeah.
But metal, all right, so there's a side of metal that's very shallow about love and women. That's all, you know what I mean? That's sort of just about sex and about manipulating and drinking and having a good time. So there's this shallow level of like pop metal.
Maybe that's what makes me mad about rap. I don't know. Yeah,
or fake sentimentality. Like Bon Jovi, again, I'm old. But Bon Jovi was like that. They had this fake sort of sentimentality going on. There wasn't like, it seemed like they had depth, but they didn't actually have depth.
Yeah, no. I kind of like Bon Jovi a little bit, but which is odd because I really...
Well, I can see that. They have a weird sort of country thing going on with like the...
He does have a few country-ish kind of things going on, but other than that, I can understand how there are some songs that I really don't like by Bon Jovi, and that's why, because I feel like I'm like, this is kind of like ranging on the pop side, like you're trying to just be... Yeah, you're trying to just be popular rather than...
So that's my problem with metal. There's like, it's either like being shallow, it's almost like Thomas Kincaid music. And again, all the art majors are applauding. You have to be an art major to get what I'm saying with that, I think. But, you know, it's very sort of shallow, or it's sort of mean and angry. You know, the only time it has like actual deep emotion is in the anger. Like in death metal, you can hear that. But even in metal from like Metallica, or even going back to like Iron Maiden and, you know, 80s stuff, the only time it had any depth was when it was mad at the world. You know, that's tough.
Yeah, we'll have to catch up on this, and we'll have to. I'm interested to hear from the other types, but that's kind of how us NFs are thinking, I think.
Yeah. All right. So let us know what music you like and how it relates to your type or temperament. Okay.